Hi everybody, and welcome to the inaugural EBN webinar show. We're attempting to do something a little bit differently from a networking point of view, and also to bring out education and informative discussion. And it's not something we've done before, so this is a new session to us. And we're here at the offices of Ashurst, the global law firm. And to introduce and to kick this off, I'm delighted to introduce Anna-Marie Slot, who is the global ESG partner for Ashurst. Anna-Marie.
Thank you, Roger, and it really is our real pleasure to invite you all here today and to support what EBN is doing, a fantastic group that's really, really galvanizing movement on this issue. As Roger mentioned, I'm our global sustainability partner. In that role, I bring together what we're doing around the globe, really working with our clients on challenges they're facing and what they're looking at. For us and our clients at the moment, there's two big pillars of what we're doing, what we're focusing a lot of our advice around, which is, how do clients achieve net zero or indeed net negative, and then also the circular economy and how that is transforming business systems. And so it's going to be a great session here today, session 1 and session 2. To see how that looks and to have our panelists speaking on that. So thanks very much for letting us be part of this.
Oh, no, not at all. It's my pleasure. And just a quick question on that you have kind of integrated circular economy quite into the middle of your strategy as a law firm, haven't you? Which seems kind of, it was a surprise to me to know that, but tell us a little bit why you've done that and why you see that going.
Yeah, so when we think about ESG, obviously it's a huge topic, right? And as lawyers, we touch kind of all of the aspects of how business operates. And so for us, we came together with a steering group of different partners around the globe to think it, from our clients' perspective, putting ourselves in their shoes, what are the kind of things that they really need to be addressing now to create a sustainable and resilient company going forward. And circular economy was just one that popped out at us as a real key driver. The companies that are really on the front foot, that are really thinking about where this goes and how you get there, realize that it's not just an energy question, it's not just anything else. It is the whole, that whole process of being a company from end to end, and instead of going on a linear path, going on that circular path. So it just made sense to us.
Yeah, wonderful. I think it's great, and we'll touch on circularity, not linear, with the guys in a second. So, lovely to be here, and thank you very much for hosting us. And we'll catch up maybe a little bit later on. So, Anna-Marie, thank you very much. Thank you. Right. So, just a little thing. I'm not an environmental guy. Although I'm learning to be an environmentalist emotionally. I'm a marketing person, and I was kind of, when I first came to this whole space, I was a little bewildered by the amount of terminology that there is, from whether it's sustainability, eco, environmental, circular economy, and so on and so forth. And I was trying to navigate my own way through this and work out what this is about. So the EBN, what we're trying to do is to learn, share, and connect across all sorts of businesses. And if the EBN was a language, there'll be people who are fluent and those who are still conjugating the verbs. And the point of this whole thing is to absorb and bring everybody together so that people can learn, share, and connect. And I was introduced to ReLondon, who had a different name at the time, and was struck by the great work that they're doing on that whole circular economy piece. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Doug and Lamia from ReLondon, and I shall join them to ask a few questions now. So I'm just very conscious that there is an edge of this stage back here, that will be take 2 if any one of us disappear down that side. So so don't move your chair too far back, actually, a warning to myself as well. So there's going to be people out there who are very well versed in the circular economy, and a whole lot of people who haven't got a clue what we're talking about. So let's kick off with talking about what is the circular economy. So share with us what it is and enlighten people.
Yeah, sure. So thanks again, Roger, for having us on. I think if I start with the linear economy, it's one that we're probably much more familiar with. So in that sense, we take, we make, and we dispose, typically. So we dig things up from the ground, we make things that are useful, and then we dispose of them. And we try and recycle as much as we can, but eventually those things, after a while, they end up in incineration or landfill. So the idea is we're trying to move away from this linear and sort of disposable throwaway economy to one that's more circular by nature. So the idea that we're keeping things in use for as long as possible, and keeping things at their highest value for as long as possible. And at a very basic level, a lot of it's already happening. You know, it's not rocket science or a new idea in many ways, but trying to get that at scale is a challenge. So just very simple things like when we go out and shop, we eat what we buy what we eat type thing. We repair what we have, we keep things going for as long as we can. But I think for me, the real fundamental change to get us to a true circular economy is challenging the idea of ownership. Do we actually need to own everything that we purchase?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you introduce ownership, you introduce disownership. There's an onus on you to have to get rid of that product or pass it on to someone to do that for you. So we're seeing a huge scale up in what we call products as a service type in terms of accessing products and services. So Netflix is a great example. All of a sudden, we don't need to buy lots of kit. We can stream movies through a subscription model. There's lots of platforms like eBay, Airbnb. They've before, about 5 years ago, they're the biggest real estate company in the world without having to build any houses. So we're really trying to sweat the assets in the existing system, using the idle capacity within our system, and trying to get that at scale. So I think that to me is really sort of fundamentally questioning: do we need to own everything that we have, or are we just wanting to actually buy or purchase the service that it provides?
So because I was intrigued by that, I was thinking about this a little bit, and I get that Netflix and product as a service, which I guess originated in software as a service. People are used to that kind of model, aren't they? But how does this work for manufacturing? Because since I was a small child, I remember my grandparents, their generation, it was very much about saving up to buy a washing machine or something, and it stayed in perpetuity. And with the credit system, I guess, everything became about kind of built-in obsolescence. How does that work for white goods manufacturers or people who rely on turnover of product? It's not good for them, is it?
Well, so actually maybe I can jump in there. I think in the old world order, maybe there would have been an incentive to just create, for example, a washing machine, sell it, and that's how you got your turnover. But I guess I'm here to say that the old world order is changing. So we live in a planet where resources are limited. So a lot of the materials that you need for manufacturing are very scarce. And by having an extractive type of industry in your manufacturing, you actually have, in some ways, a weaker supply chain. For example, if you are making a dishwasher or a washing machine, we're moving towards equipment being, for example, intelligent with technology integrated. Your machines are smart, and that requires materials that are infinitely scarce on this planet. So very, very pressured to get those materials, lots of volatility in prices, and that's very difficult. So as the context is changing, then it's making it difficult to continue with a model where you're just making more. And then also the context is changing in terms of legislation, with extended producer responsibility being introduced. So manufacturers now have an obligation to start to think about what happens to their products. And citizens are changing in terms of their awareness of the issue, what they expect from manufacturers to be more environmentally friendly. And then the last thing, which I think is the most exciting part of the circular economy, is that actually by having a different model, it's really great for business. So, for example, if a manufacturer were to become a remanufacturer and able to repair equipment as well as just making it the first time, that's a whole new revenue source for them. That's a whole new set of data about how long their products last that helps them design their products in a different way. That's a whole new relationship with their customers that they're building. So there's infinite value in also rethinking what you are as a manufacturer in the system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've had numerous discussions with people as I've gone on my journey from kind of marketer to environmental understander, as it were, around the need for systemic change in business. And this is quite fundamental, isn't it, really, to get organisations that are been around for a long time to rethink the whole business model. So the positivity, and one of the things we want to talk about at EBN is very much about there is an upside commercially to doing the right thing from an environmental sustainability point of view. But I don't know if you could, but is there an example of how that might work, just so we can kind of boil it down so people watching this could understand where the economics of it are?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can talk about it from a business perspective, and there's also sort of macroeconomic benefits. So in terms of specifically for a business, if, for example, we take the example of the manufacturer introducing a whole new set of services around not just selling equipment, but also repairing equipment, that might create a much more stable source of revenue and a repeatable, predictable source of revenue, so supports the kind of business to grow. You might also choose to offer your equipment on a leasing model or a rental model. So again, you're having to produce, you get a lot more margin per product that you create, right? Because the same product you just created once, you're getting lots of transactions off of. So that can really help as well with business growth. And then there's also sort of at a macro scale benefits of it.
Yeah, and I think at a macro scale, we did some work pre-pandemic that looked at the value to London if there was a full transition to the circular economy. And that work concluded that about 7 billion worth of value is there to be gained by 2030 in the form of new products, new jobs, and then also huge savings around resource use, efficient resource use, and less waste costs. The waste costs are going up significantly. Landfill tax is up to about £85 a tonne at the moment. So anything going to landfill or incineration is post £100 a tonne at the moment. So there's these huge pressures going on to get more efficient with the things we use and consume. And I have actually got a little prop from that.
Yes, that's great.
Something I prepared earlier for the
Doug told me about this prop, so can you bring it?
This is what I'll call a luxury item. This is a product from a company called Alvis and Cressay, and they have a relationship with the London Fire Brigade, and they turn a lot of discarded and surplus fire hose and other fire equipment into luxury handbags and purses and wallets. And this is a satchel I usually have my laptop in here. But this is a high-value product sold for about 70, 80 quid. And it'll cost more than that to actually send it to landfill if you had a whole ton of the stuff. Right. So the idea is you're upcycling, you're taking something that would be a waste product, so it's a saving to the London Fire Brigade. And in this sense also, you've got a situation where that organisation is actually donating some of their funds to the London Firefighters Charity. So it's a nice sort of complete circle story in that sense. But just to give an example of where those opportunities are, where there's muck, there's brass type situation. So, and we're seeing that at a much greater scale across all sorts of products and services offered. But just sort of give that one a
no, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and definitely with the work that we're doing, so we work with small and medium-sized businesses in London, so we've worked with over 280 businesses, and we're seeing many of them being really successful commercially through models such as this, rethinking the value of waste or offering products in a completely different way.
And so there's guys in this audience here and people who'll be watching this at home that aren't in some form of manufacture, for arguments, in services. We're in a global law firm's office here. What can service organisations do to get to feel part of the circular economy?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, there's kind of two ways to think about it. There's thinking about how the services company operate, and then thinking about also the role that their services play in the system. Right. So starting with the first one is just thinking about, what are the materials that are coming through your business? Every business might have an office, catering facilities, equipment like laptops and things that their employees are using. And every single material that you come across has a contribution towards climate change. So we know that 45% of emissions actually come from all the products that we make, that we use, and we dispose of. So as a business, every single material that goes through your business, there's an opportunity there to think differently about what you're bringing into your business. So, thinking of the furniture in your business, we're going to hear a little bit about that later. Where are you sourcing that from? Are you buying new, or could you perhaps get upcycled or secondhand furniture for your offices? The waste from food, for example, the coffee beans that you're generating, we know that there's companies who can transform waste coffee beans into cosmetics, into wood, like pellets for burning. So there's value in everything that is coming out of your business, and by starting to think about what you're touching, that already is a good step. And then there's thinking about the service that you offer. So in a law firm is thinking about, the actual advice that you give and then the legal advice that you give. How might you be supporting other businesses to adopt the circular economy through what you're suggesting?
So it is inclusive. It's for everybody. I love that idea, because it's that point that as consumers, business-to-business consumers of goods, we can all make a difference. And it's not just about, the great example there of the fantastic bag. So it's everybody can play their part in it. And economically, we're finding more and more that it makes sense and that there's an upside to it, which is really great. So we're going to talk a little later when we're joined by one of the Ashurst guys. So I don't want to preempt too much on that. But what are the barriers? What are the challenges to this?
Yeah, sure. So, when we've had the inertia of centuries of operating in a certain way, change can be scary, and it's, can be difficult to think about where to start. And what I would say as a kind of solution for that is that the market is already there and growing, offering lots of solutions to actually tackle the issues we're talking about. So, if you, as a business, you are generating waste through your cafeteria or through the furniture that you're purchasing for your offices, there are already providers on the market who can help you deal with those materials, and so you don't have to go at it alone. Is basically kind of a first tip.
Cool.
And I think, just to build on that, I think a big challenge that I certainly found, so at ReLondon, our job, we sit between the Mayor and London's 33 local authorities, and we do a number of things basically to help organisations to transition to a low-carbon circular economy. And that all starts with the individual, then the organisation, and the wide area that they represent. And interesting things that I've found with the local authorities I've worked with is that trying to mainstream circular economy across the business, so trying to make sure it's not just something about waste and recycling. It means something to everyone. And a really interesting example is I was working with London Borough of Islington, and someone from public health was looking at one of the businesses that we're spotlighting, that we work with, called the Library of Things. We can go on and rent items. And they saw that as a form of social prescribing because it gets people out in the community and engaging. So all of a sudden you start to see these links across public health, education, community engagement, regeneration, housing. There's always something, the idea that you can build homes in a more modular, flexible way depending on tenancy use. So we find this conversation snowball, and there's always some hook that you can get people into. So getting that sort of mainstreaming is very important, and we do a lot of training with local authorities and other organisations that want to become more circular. And that's really gaining momentum and getting a lot of value for those organisations.
No, that's fantastic. And I've been very, very selfish because I've asked these guys to come down here and just pick their brains and use them completely without saying anything about ReLondon. And that was deliberate because I want to segue into that. So when I first was introduced to you guys, you had the rather fabulous name of the London Waste and Recycling Board. And if anything screamed public sector, that was it, I think. But you've been wonderfully rebranded to ReLondon. But so just share with us, what is ReLondon, what is your purpose, and some of the things that you're doing, because they're amazing things that you're doing.
So I think, just building on a bit of what I said before, so I think the idea is we're trying to help people understand what is the circular economy and what can it mean to them to get that value. So we are set up by statutes. We have to perform some roles, and we have some restrictions around that, but we have some freedom to start working outside with other organisations beyond public sector to help them understand and demonstrate circularity. So a lot of the work that I'm involved in was working with local authorities and getting them to understand where the circular economy applies. But I think importantly is then connecting them with the private sector and with those sort of innovative small businesses that are coming up through the chain, which is an important piece of work that the Mayor leads. And then we do a lot of campaigning. So we do a lot of work to promote the good behaviours that citizens and businesses need to be taking. A lot of people are already doing it. They just need a bit more help or support to engage, and so we provide a lot of services in that space as well.
Yeah. And I think that bit about the fusion of the public and private sector is interesting. People have said to me, is the public sector starting to make greater demands on private sector suppliers to fulfil, whether it be ESG or particularly around circularity? Is that, I know there's guys out there in the audience that would agree with this, but is that coming into tenders now, basically?
It is, it is. We're seeing, and again, it comes back to the hook that you use. So when I was working at the Greater London Authority, I was working with the procurement team to get circularity embedded into their documents and their processes. And I was trying to find a way in. And as soon as I start talking about social value and inclusive economy, getting more smaller local SMEs into the supply chain, they were in because they had to deliver on that mandate. And so that's a really big opportunity to try and, especially in this time of COVID, post-COVID, trying to get local economies going again, trying to support those businesses that are working in the green space, local businesses, start to address those sort of resilience issues that Lamia was saying before. And that's a key part of what we do at ReLondon, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's great to see is the market is definitely catching up, and actually, I mean, the market is way ahead actually of what the local authorities even are starting to think about, because I think there's a little bit of a translation piece to understand, what does the circular economy mean for me as a local authority, or again, what does it mean for me as a large business? So through the work that we do, working with small, medium-sized businesses in London, we're seeing a range of different innovations that are coming through, and part of our role is really to make that accessible, both to the private sector market, but also to local authorities, and help everyone see that the solutions are out there and that they're ready for you, basically.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's great. And commercially, where's the money come from to fund you guys? I mean, share with us where that comes from.
We'll pass the hat around later on.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But no, we have a mix of public and private. So to say, because we're set up in statute, we have to deliver a public service in that sense. And so we have some money from government, but that is set to come to an end in 2025. So our CEO is mad and going back to government to see what can happen afterwards. But it gives us the freedom to develop some commercial products as well. So the academy that I lead, the Training Academy, we charge for that. We charge for some support we provide to organisations as well. So there's a scope to do a bit of both, but we're an evolving organisation in that piece, going from a traditional public sector body to more one that is a bit more fluid and have that sort of public-private funding.
And could people here and who are watching this, London-based, I guess, obviously there's a clue in the name, could commercial businesses get involved with the academy? I mean, is that something? Is it open market that they could actually pay for?
Yes, yeah. I mean, training is it's traditionally set up for local authorities, but we can absolutely adapt that training for businesses, and I think also through some of our other products we sell and we offer connecting businesses together. And I think that's obviously a big piece of work that Lamia leads on.
Yeah. So we've launched a matchmaking platform, which is a free service online that you can already start to browse to find circular products and services that are available on the market. So that's available. And then in addition to that, we're very keen to speak to businesses about how we can help them connect. First of all, help them understand what is relevant for them from the market, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. So circular economy will look different for different types of businesses. So we can help that translation piece. And offer that as a service.
And Lamia, you talk about translation. I think that's a key word, actually, because there is, as I said at the beginning of this thing, that do we call it sustainability? Is it eco? Is it green? Is it environmental? Is it circular economy? I think to an awful lot of kind of regular businesses, it's a little bewildering. So that translation's important. And I would say, I guess, the Circular Economy Week that you've got coming up is definitely a starting point for them to go to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Actually, Doug, so you wanted to say something about that.
Thanks for mentioning that. So we run this event. It's a very, very popular event every year in June. This year it's 13 to 17 June. And it's really a chance for everyone that's interested in the circular economy to come together. And we usually get a really big interest from the construction sector. So you can come in and do your own events. It's a mixture of virtual and live. Do your own events, but also participate in the events that go on there as well. So that's a big push. I want to give that one a big push. But also we have a project called Circuit, which is a construction-based project where we're working with 3 other European cities. Just got the funding in before we left Europe to work with other cities and actually develop tools and resources to help the construction sector become more circular in the work that they do. So then in terms of like design, incorporating design principles around design for modularity and flexibility, sourcing materials, non-virgin materials, trying to make those sort of activities more mainstream. Because the policy is actually getting tighter as well. You need to, especially in London, if you want to start building large assets and buildings in London, you need to demonstrate circularity through that process. And I have to say I'm a bit guilty of that because I led the policy when I was back at the GLA. So a mix of policy and also market-led ambition is
quite right. It's not guilty of it. And of course, I think the other thing with this is that if anybody who's watching this is in the supply chain of construction, tier 1 contractors, they need to understand, because they're going to get asked a lot of questions about this, going back to that whole thing in terms of tenders, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. And just to, I'll take some questions, hopefully, from people. Just to reiterate, the numbers were the things that struck me when we first spoke ages ago about. Just tell me again what you see the potential upside to London's economy being by 2030.
So the report that we published before pre-COVID was £7 billion of value by 2030. So it's a staggering number, and we're updating that report actually as well. And we'll launch a new report during CE Week. But I think the really fascinating thing for me is that the 12,500 jobs that were found to be new jobs, net jobs, were mainly around reuse, refurbishment, repurposing items. And I think that's where you start to bring in the whole inclusive economy side as well. This is not just about a movement for the middle classes. One workshop was at said, not everyone wants a 13-pound reusable cup. I think that's a really good analogy in the sense that it can't just be for the middle classes. So it needs to be things that bring along everyone from different parts of the economy, different demographics. And I think the idea of as I say, changing your relationship with access and ownership allows that more of an inclusive journey to take place.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I think it's an absolutely fascinating subject area. And I know that, the global economy, the world has been through some pretty tough times. And as we're saying this, we all know the terrible stuff that's going, the crisis in Ukraine at the moment. But this is important as well. It's not just something that can be put away because there is something pressing going on in the world, is it? It's fundamental, this.
I mean, yeah, I think it's as, the key is in the framing of the language, circular economy, it's our economy, it's, the world in which we live, and it's really a conception of how we live on this planet within the boundaries of what the planet can afford. So I think it's an existential question. It's what the circular economy offers is one approach to solving that problem and one set of toolkits, which has the advantage of kind of slotting into the way we already work. The economy is, very important. And by finding a different way to consume and produce, it's taking us towards a better world.
Brilliant. Doug, Lamia, it's been absolutely superb. I could sit and talk to you all night about this, and hopefully there might be some people out there who've got a question. Any questions for these guys? Hi, yes. If you just tell us, so there's a microphone coming down here any second there, so just bear with us. If you just say who you are and where you're from as well, it'd be great.
Cheers. Thank you. Really great talk so far. Thanks a lot. I'm Matt from Ashton. We're a climate change charity doing climate awards and with a particular focus on green skills. So I'd just like to hear a bit more about, the training you're doing with local authorities or maybe SMEs and what you're learning from these local authorities or SMEs on green skills training and other accreditations that are forming. How is that developing?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take the local authority training side for sure. So what we found, we did a lot of training needs analysis, if you like, with a few local authorities to see what is it that they want and how to apply it. And the word that came back was practical. It has to be practical. And it has to be mainstreamed across the organisations. The way we work with local authorities in that sense, we find a circular economy champion, if you like, the person that's sort of really into this stuff. That typically they lie within the environment groups. And then we help them to work across the organisation, say, right, who can we start getting from the big portfolio areas like housing, regeneration, health, engage those people, make it relevant to them and bring them into our workshop. And so we run a half-day workshop for people all across the directorate. And our mantra is making circular economy everyone's business. So that's a key part to get the conversation going. And we've had some good feedback where people are actually finding that once they've found a link in, that department's off. Housing starts to embed circularity into their prospectus documents, their funding documents, the local plan, they start to embed in policy. So that's sort of the teaser to get people in. And then we offer bespoke modules. So things like procurement, which is a huge lever for local authorities, £24 billion a year spent on local authority procurement, huge ripple effect with suppliers. So we do these sort of deep dive sessions as well to really help people that work in specific functions to apply the circular economy.
Yeah, and I think as Doug mentioned earlier, we're going to be releasing a report later this year and actually during CE Week, looking at, what does skills in the circular economy look like for London? So there'll be more information about that coming through. But in terms of our work with SMEs, I mean, the innovators that we're working with are already doing it, so they don't think about the circular economy in terms of skills. They're just learning as they go and doing things. In terms of the services that we offer, it's really about helping them understand the strategic relevance of the circular economy for their business. So that's sort of one area of knowledge that we work in. But one of the other recurring topics that comes up is around carbon accounting. So typically what businesses are trying to do at the moment is talk about the positive impacts of the circular economy as it relates to climate change. And that requires a little bit of skill set around carbon accounting, which isn't always accessible for smaller businesses. So I'd say that's a big area of need.
Great. One more question, Ralph.
Thank you. That was great, thank you. It's Ralph Tribe from Be People. We're an inclusive search and HR strategy consultancy. I'd heard that the government is now requiring organisations who are bidding for work over 10 million to have their own carbon reduction plan in order for them to actually bid for the work. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, assuming that you know more about that, and what implications that might have for businesses generally?
Okay, well, I can have a go at that if you like. So I think I'm not intimately familiar with that exact requirement, but I think what we are seeing, what I've noticed, is that with Great Britain coming out of Europe, the procurement rules are changing a lot, and so there's a lot more focus on actually getting more local businesses employed into the supply chain. So I think that tied in with commitments around carbon makes a huge opportunity, I think, for local business growth and people to get involved. But I think it is hard, as Mia was saying before, for smaller businesses sometimes to demonstrate their environmental benefit. They need extra support or tools or capacity. So I think that needs to be coupled with investment coming from government as well to help those organisations to come up to speed. I think there is a huge opportunity around that procurement, those changes to the procurement rules and regulations, to try and allow more companies to apply for work in a space that they sometimes wouldn't have had the opportunity because they've had to compete with a wider European tranche. But that's sort of my view on that.
And some of the things that we're starting to look into is maybe also different financing models to support these kinds of projects to come up. So looking at, for example, outcome-based financing, where instead of paying for a contract that stipulates certain outputs, actually local authorities or other players could pay for outcomes. So it gives businesses who are delivering the service a little bit of flexibility to think about what they need to do to deliver the best outcome. And sort of that's an approach that's worked in the social space, and that we think will also work for the circular economy. So that's something we're actively trying to set up as another demonstration of different ways that you can procure to have positive outcomes as well as getting good service.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks very much to Doug and Lamia and everybody for listening to that. I hope it's been useful and informative. There will be another version, an episode 2, if you like, of the EBN Circular Show, where we'll hear from a couple of businesses and to deep dive a little bit into actually what they're doing, as well as looking at some of the legal angles and other things that are there as well. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks very much to you guys. It's been great to spend time with you, and thanks very much for coming.